Hey everyone, now that we've gotten through our open chords and our bar chords, we're ready for power chords, and this is the fun stuff. This is a lot of the popular music styles, especially the harder rock and punk styles. They use this chord almost exclusively, so there's some bands that make an entire living just using these chord forms. So look at the PDF, follow along in the lesson, and get to know these chords well, okay? See you soon. Okay, so we're going to start to take a look at some of these power chords and what they are. A brief explanation of what a power chord is. If you take one of the open position chords you did earlier, the A major, the C, the G, whatever, they are actually called, theoretically, their name is called triads. The reason why that is because there's only 3 notes in every chord. That's where you get the tri from. Now, you might be saying, well, some are 5-string chords and 6-string chords, and how is there only 3 notes? Well, notes are doubled or tripled in it. If you look at this G major chord, we have actually 3 G's in it. We have this low G, we have a G here, and then a high G. There's 3 G's in it. There's 1 B, and there's 2 D's. So some notes are doubled and some are tripled, depending on the chord voicing it is. So if a triad is 3 notes, what a power chord is if you take a triad, well, if you look at a triad actually from a scale point of view, if I ran a major scale up, now we haven't looked at scales yet, but you may want to look at the Understanding Keys lesson on the site. It's basically a, if you run a major scale, it's 7 notes, just like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, okay? That's not a major scale, but it's just the musical alphabet goes to G. So if you take the first, the third, and the 5th note of that scale, that gives you those 3 notes of a triad. Now if you take the 3rd note out, then you just have the 1st note and the 5th note in the key. And that's why on the PDF download you see G5 and C5 or whatever. What that basically means is we start a power chord, say we'll do the G5 first. You started on G, and really a power chord is only 2 notes. So G is the 1st note in a key, let's just say that. Then the 5th note in the key of G is D. So you play those 2 together, and you have a G power chord, or G5 was the theoretical name for it. Now you'll see that we also added a note on top of it with our pinky. That is just another G, 1 octave higher. So altogether we have this. You can play a power chord for just 2 notes or 3. Okay, so that's what a power chord is. And so don't worry about all that theory and stuff yet, but basically a power chord is a shape that we play on the guitar, and on these 3 strings it's played like this. The reason why I did bar chords first is because you can see that it's held really close to it. You hold your thumb in the middle of the neck, have your fingers go straight up. But in this case, you only have pressure on the tips of your 1st finger, 3rd, and 4th, and then the bottom half of your 1st finger actually relaxes. It doesn't push the strings down anymore. It relaxes, so they're muted. So these top 3 strings here are muted because I'm relaxing. I'm still pushing down just the tip of it, but the rest of the finger is very relaxed and just laying on the strings, not pushing them down at all. So we have, that way it mutes them out. So when we're doing our strumming, which you see a lot of power chord strumming, it'd be like, okay, I'm hitting more than 3 strings. I'm trying to just aim for the strings. That's what you want to do, but if you ever mess up and hit one of these 3 strings, you won't hear it because you're muting it. Now, if we move the power chord over, it's called C5 because C is in the bass, but it's the exact same shape. All right, so we're just on 3 different strings. Now here we have to do just like we did in our bar chords. We have to be able to let your finger hold this note and these 2 out, and then the bottom of your 1st finger mute those 1st and 2nd strings, but the top of the 1st finger, the tip, has got to go past the 5th string a little bit and once again touch the very bottom of the 6th string to mute it out. So the first finger is doing a lot of muting. It's doing muting underneath the note it's playing and then over. So we have this. You can hit all 6 strings if you want, and you can only hear the 3 that you're playing. All right, so that takes a little bit just a hand position to get used to. Then we move over to our third. Power chords aren't played very frequently on these strings, but we have now, since the tuning between the second and third string is different than all other tuning between the strings of guitar, our power chord shape has to change. So now we still have 1 on the 3rd fret on the 4th string, and then 3rd finger, 5th fret, 3rd string. But instead of our pinky being at the 5th fret, it's at the 6th now. And all you're going to be able to do is mute the string above it. This very low string is going to have to be muted with your base of your palm in your right hand. But the high string above it is muted with your first finger at the bottom of your first finger. So don't worry about if it's an F, C, G. We're not getting into that yet. I just want you to memorize the shapes. On these 3 strings, a power chord is played like this. On these 3, it's played like this. And these 3 is played like this. And you can play them any fret you want on all those strings. All right, and then the last 3 strings, very rarely played up here. The only way you can kind of get to it is you're going to have to do a little bit of a bar. You hold your first finger at the 3rd fret here, and then you reach over and you bar 6 and 6 with your pinky. Just smush your finger. Collapse that first joint there and smush it against the 6 and 6. And that's a power chord on the high strings. Not used that often, but used for color every once in a while. If you can do this stretch and this bar is too hard for you, move your 3rd finger to that 2nd string 6, and then your 1st finger to your pinky to the 1st string 6, and play it like that, and move it around. So we have, okay? So remember, try to look out for the muting in those chords. You'll see X's on the strings in the PDF download. Make sure those strings are silent when you're playing. And try to play these chords, get them just as clean as the bar chords, and then move them around and try to get used to them where they feel across the neck. Okay? Have fun.